To another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war breaking news update for very early morning on the 25th of October 2025 UK time. I am going to talk to you in this breaking news update about the Tomahawk cruise missile, a missile that the US had promised. Well, they hadn't really. Donald Trump had indicated that the Ukrainians would possibly receive the Tomahawk cruise missile. Very useful for striking deep inside Russia. And then after a phone call with Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump decided, not so much. And it was rescinded as a kind of an implicit offer. So let's talk about Tomahawks, because it seems that Keir Starmer and the British have been indicating that they may be back on the agenda, or at least they are trying to get them to Ukraine. So here we have Zelensky saying, previous to today, that, quote, Tomahawks are not only in the United States, some European countries also have them. We are already talking to countries that can help. So he said that a couple of days ago after the news that the US wasn't going to be forthcoming with the Tomahawks. Then, of course, today, there was a coalition of the willing meeting in London where Keir Starmer went and met, Zelensky went and met Keir Starmer after meeting the King of England, Charles III. And I'm not sure what other European leaders were actually physically present in London, but there was a meeting of the coalition of willing. Anyway, Keir Starmer has pushed allies, and this was the news before the coalition of willing. It was all about pushing allies to get long-range weapons to Ukraine. I mean, not just defensive weapons, but long-range offensive weapons. That was the indication. That was exactly what we wanted to hear from Starmer and from the coalition of willing. It is absolutely paramount that the Ukrainians have the ability to strike really deep into Russia offensively, to stop the production of drones and missiles, to really hit the Russian military industrial complex, possibly also their energy sector. So that's what we were hearing prior to the meeting today. Here we have Max 25 saying there are already new packages from our partners. This is Zelensky saying this, a summary. And our understanding of long range is also finding more supporters. There will be more of our targeted long range sanctions. By that, he means our targeted long range sanctions are the way we sanction Russia is to hit these hydrocarbon facilities, these oil facilities and gas distribution and production facilities with missiles and drones, munitions. So that's their scare quotes sanctions. So when he says there will be more of our targeted long-range sanctions, that means there will be more of our strikes on facilities and targets deep inside Russia. Quote, sanctions of direct action against the Russian war machine. Then we also crucially hear this. So Null Report says Zelensky hinted at undisclosed decisions made during the London summit, saying details remain confidential to make things harder for Putin. I can't tell you how important this is. Too much. I mean, I say this as a YouTube analyst, reporter, whatever I do, news aggregator, whatever it is that I am. I'm always up for disclosing information to you, right? So it's great when there is stuff in the information spaces that I can divulge to you. I accumulate that information, assimilate it, and get it to you. But actually, there are many times where I have said, I wish this information was not out in the public sphere. Like, this shouldn't have been talked about. It is not good that the Ukrainians or the Americans or the Europeans or whomsoever is talking about this, whatever it is. It would be better if we didn't know this, or even more accurately, it would be better if the Russians didn't know about this. So when Zelensky comes out and says, we've talked about a bunch of things that remain confidential to make things harder for Putin, that's awesome. It's brilliant that I can't report that to you. However, I love the cryptic nature of this, such that one imagines that Ukraine might be receiving some pretty useful things. So anyway, to continue, no report says he emphasized that sanctions are hitting Russia hard, fuel shortages, bankrupt regions, and a bleeding budget, all of which he said personally affect Putin. So that's good news from Zelensky. Then we hear this. Keir Starmer says negotiations with Trump on the transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine are currently underway. This is not just about Ukraine's freedom and sovereignty. It's a fight for Ukraine, for Europe, and for the UK. We are working with Ukraine, not only for Ukraine, but for the benefit of the rest of us. So, of course, you've got to couch the support for Ukraine in terms of being a benefit to whatever country you are from. But the idea here is that Starmer and I presume others are pressuring the US, negotiating with the US for the transfer of Tomahawks, not necessarily from the US themselves, could be from other nations that carry the Tomahawks, but permission, I presume, must be given by the United States. So there's pressure coming from Starmer and others for Ukraine to receive these weapons. That is absolutely brilliant. Here we have the new Voice of Ukraine media site stating or titling their article, Tomahawks for Ukraine still on the table, UK Prime Minister Starmer says. Starmer made, and this is the article, Starmer made the statement at a joint press conference with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, French President Emmanuel Macron, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and other members of the Coalition of the Willing who met in London. As reported by Sky News, the PM said the coalition and US President Donald Trump are still working together, quote, as one wider coalition in relation to their support for Ukraine. Quote, we've put in more missiles from the UK in recent days and weeks and are pushing the case for long-range Tomahawk missiles. Sky News quoted Starmer. Now, Tomahawk missiles is in square brackets there, which is I don't know the exact quote, and that's either an implication or maybe for long-range Tomahawk. I don't know, but Sky News has all here. The new Voice of Ukraine has square bracketed that, so I don't know what exactly was mentioned. Starmer continued, it is really important we do have long range and those discussions are ongoing, end quote. In turn, Zelensky echoed the importance of US involvement in the peace process, saying the coalition cannot find a way to stop the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to end the war without the United States. Quote, Putin's plan is to divide and make us weaker, Zelensky said. Okay, so who knows, like, really, how probable Tomahawks are in terms of going to Ukraine from somewhere in the world, from nations that stock Tomahawks or from the US themselves. But it appears that there is at least some good news here that Starmer and other European leaders, I presume, are pressuring the United States to give Tomahawks to Ukraine. That's exactly what they need. They need as many weapons as they can get their hands on and as much capability as they can possibly get. Now, before I leave you, a couple of other points that came out from today. So President Macron has said, I want to confirm, Vladimir, so obviously Zelensky, that we will deliver in the days to come additional Aster missiles. So Aster missiles are the air defense missiles they use in the SAMP-T systems that are somewhat analogous to the Patriot missile system. They have two systems as far as I understand in Ukraine, but there's been a bottleneck with interceptor production, rather like with the Patriots. Okay, we've got a bunch of Patriots. We need missiles for them. So Macron has promised additional Aster missiles, new training programs, and new Mirage fighter jets. So it looks like Ukraine might well be receiving new Mirage, or not new, but extra Mirage fighter jets at some point soon. That would be fantastic news for the Ukrainians. As I've said previously, I think a game changer would be a scale of planes that would really make a difference, as long as they get the munitions as well to go alongside with that. But another 70 planes for the Ukrainians to utilize would be a massive game changer, I think, personally. Anyway, really good news from the French here, and great news from Keir Starmer with regard to the possibility of Tomahawks going to Ukraine still on the table. The British and I presume others are negotiating on behalf of Ukraine for Tomahawks to get to Ukraine. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully that was of interest and of use. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.